The hum of the hangar echoed in the early morning light. Rows of gleaming training aircraft sat neatly in line, their propellers still, waiting for another day of lessons. Among the bustle of cadets walking in, laughing and adjusting their uniforms, one figure stood out. Captain Laura Bennett, 36 years old, sharp-eyed with hair neatly tied back, walked toward the instructor's office. She carried her flight bag with the calm confidence of someone who had spent thousands of hours in the sky. But that confidence was about to be tested in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Laura was not just a flight instructor. She had once been among the first women in her airline's training program, had faced skepticism from captains who doubted her, and had flown across continents in some of the world's largest aircraft. But today, she was beginning a new assignment, instructing a fresh batch of cadets, young, ambitious men who thought they already knew what flying demanded.
Please subscribe to Women Inspired channel.
As she entered the classroom, the chatter died down. A dozen cadets straightened in their seats. She placed her bag on the desk, her uniform crisp and immaculate, and looked at them steadily. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Captain Laura Bennett. I'll be your instructor for the next 6 months. By the time we're finished, you'll either be ready for the skies, or you'll realize you're not meant for them." Some cadets nodded respectfully, but Laura caught the faintest smirk from the back row. 2 young men exchanged glances, the kind that said more than words could. She had seen it before. Doubt, skepticism, the silent question. A woman is going to teach us? After the introductions, she began her lecture on aerodynamics and cockpit resource management. Her explanations were precise, clear, and practical, but she could feel the resistance in the room. When she asked a question, some cadets responded with half-hearted answers. Others avoided eye contact. And then there were the whispered remarks she could almost hear. "She's strict. Let's see if she even knows what she's talking about." Laura let it pass for now, but she noted every reaction. Later, during the first simulator session, the tension became obvious. She paired the cadets into crews. In one simulator, a tall, confident cadet named Mitchell took the captain's seat. His co-pilot Davis sat beside him. Laura observed quietly as they went through pre-flight checks. When Mitchell stumbled on a procedure, she stepped in. "Mitchell, you skipped the hydraulic system check." He smirked. "I was just about to get there." Laura's tone stayed even. In aviation, almost is dangerous. You check it when it's time, not later. The room was silent. Mitchell gave a forced smile, but his eyes burned with defiance. After the session, as the cadets gathered outside, Laura lingered by the door. She overheard Mitchell whisper to another cadet, "Unbelievable, she's nitpicking every move. Bet she never flew anything bigger than a puddle jumper." Laura walked away without a word, but inside her chest tightened. Not because of the insult, she had heard worse, but because these were the men she had to mold into competent pilots. Their attitude could kill them in the real world. That night, sitting alone at her kitchen table, Laura flipped through her old logbooks. The faded ink brought back memories of her first flights, the moments when she too had been underestimated. She remembered an old captain who once said to her, "This isn't a job for women with thin skin. Prove yourself or step aside." She had chosen to prove herself, and now she would again. The following weeks tested her resolve. Every class she felt the pushback. Cadets muttered under their breath when corrected. Some challenged her with unnecessary questions, not to learn, but to trip her up. During a weather lecture, one cadet raised his hand and asked, "Captain Bennett, have you personally flown through a thunderstorm, or is this just theory?" Laura locked eyes with him. "Yes. In fact, I flew an Airbus A330 through severe weather over the Atlantic with 190 passengers on board. I suggest you listen carefully because one day you'll be responsible for lives too." The room went quiet, but even then she could sense the resistance simmering. In the simulator, she pushed them harder. She created engine failures, sudden wind shear, communication breakdowns. Some cadets performed well, others cracked under pressure. And when they did, she didn't yell, she simply pointed out in meticulous detail where they failed and why it mattered. Her calm precision unnerved them more than anger ever could. Yet still the whispers followed her. "She's too harsh. She doesn't trust us. But she's just making it harder because she's insecure." One evening, while reviewing flight reports, Laura overheard two cadets in the hallway. "Look, man, I just don't buy it. Would you trust her in a real cockpit? I wouldn't." Laura walked away without a word, but inside her chest tightened. Not because of the insult, she had heard worse, but because these were the men she had to mold into competent pilots. Their attitude could kill them in the real world. That night, sitting alone in her car, Laura sat for a long time before driving home. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe she was too strict. Maybe they would never accept her. But then she remembered why she was here. It wasn't to be liked, it was to make them into pilots who could survive the skies. And if that meant being doubted, so be it. The turning point came during a particularly grueling flight exercise. She had assigned Mitchell and Davis to a cross-country navigation mission. Halfway through, she simulated an electrical failure. The cockpit went dark. Alarms rang. Mitchell froze. "What do we do?" he shouted. Davis scrambled, flipping through the emergency checklist, but his hands shook. The simulator spiraled into chaos. Laura leaned forward from the instructor's seat. Her voice was calm, firm, steady. "Breathe, aviate, navigate, communicate, fly the plane first." Mitchell hesitated, then tightened his grip on the controls. Laura guided them through the steps, forcing them to focus, to control their panic. By the end, the simulator stabilized. The cadets sat there, sweating, breathing hard, humbled. When they stepped out, Mitchell didn't meet his eyes, but for the first time, he didn't smirk. Over the next few weeks, the cracks began to show in their resistance. Slowly, grudgingly, the cadets started to realize Laura wasn't their enemy. She was their lifeline. She wasn't there to humiliate them. She was there to make sure they lived long enough to fly another day. In one late-night study session, Davis confided to another cadet, unaware Laura was passing by. "You know, she's tough, but she knows her stuff. If I ever get into trouble in the air, I'd want her in my cockpit." It was a small victory, but for Laura, it meant everything. The real test, however, came during a supervised training flight. Laura was in the back of the small twin-engine trainer when Mitchell and Davis piloted. The weather report had looked stable, but as they cruised at 5,000 feet, dark clouds rolled in faster than expected. Rain lashed against the windshield, turbulence shook the plane. Mitchell's knuckles went white on the yoke. Laura's voice cut through the storm. "Focus, trust your instruments." Lightning flashed, thunder roared. The cadets struggled, fear evident in every motion. Laura leaned forward, calm as ever. "You know what to do. We've trained for this." Minute by minute, guided by her firm instructions, they brought the aircraft back under control. When they finally landed, the cadets were drenched in sweat. On the ground, Mitchell turned to her, his voice unsteady but sincere. "Captain Bennett, I was wrong about you. We all were." Laura looked at him, the corners of her mouth lifting just slightly. "You don't need to like me, Mitchell. You just need to learn. The skies don't forgive arrogance." From that day on, the tone shifted. The cadets no longer muttered in defiance. They listened, they learned, and they began to respect her not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it. Months later, at the graduation ceremony, Laura stood at the back of the hangar, watching as her cadets received their wings. They were different now, humbled, disciplined, prepared. Mitchell caught her eye from the stage. For the first time, his nod carried genuine respect. As the applause filled the air, Laura felt a quiet pride. She had fought this battle before, and she would fight it again, because the skies belonged to no gender, no prejudice, only to those strong enough to master them. And she would make sure every cadet who passed through her classroom never forgot it.